Hi everybody, welcome to Easy Update. I recently shared on Twitter the screenshot of this timeline from the 2020 Goaty Awards video that we put out. And people seemed to like it and seemed interested and had some questions about it, so I thought I've done a few episodes about video editing in the past, but I realized those are all kind of long. And so this week I wanted to give like quick and dirty tips for better edits and for faster editing and just tips and tricks in general that can help you improve your craft at editing. So number one, as always, make the letter H add edit. And what that means is any track that's active over here, if you just hit the letter H, it'll slice them. You see? It's all about minimal inputs. How can you achieve something in the fewest steps humanly possible? So instead of having to go over here, click the razor tool, click where you want to cut, or hitting C for the razor tool, you just, undoing that there, you can just hit H and it'll cut everything you have active. And if you don't want to cut, and you say, well, what if I want to cut just one thing like that? Well, you can hit C and use the razor tool too, or you just highlight just that thing and cut it, and there you go. And what I love about that is it leaves the preceding thing highlighted, so then you can do a ripple delete, for example, and it'll delete that and move everything back. Let's show you what that looks like. So that's H. I'll highlight that, and then if I hit delete, boom, it snaps the whole thing back. So I set the delete key as my ripple delete. To set your hotkeys, you go to Edit Keyboard Shortcuts, and the easiest thing to do is like add edit. You just search it, and see, mine just says H. And the reason you do that is because your hand is on like the home row of editing, which is J, K, and L. Because J goes backwards, L goes forward, and K stops you. And you also use in and out, I and O sometimes. And so your pinky can just hit H. And I've got a photo of that here. Oh man, I need to dust my keyboard, goodness. And then ripple delete, I make the delete key. So there's the delete key and the backspace key. And you can make those be different kinds of deletes. Tip number 2, crossfade your audio. So you'll see right here, I have constant power crossfades on my audio. And this is really important, and it's maybe the number one thing I notice in beginners when they're starting out in like YouTube videos and stuff, is you'll have pops in the audio. Or I was watching a video about roller skating earlier today, and like they changed from one location to another, and like there was traffic noise, and all of a sudden it was just like traffic noise, and that could be alleviated by just crossfading. And you'll get clicks and pops, and you don't always need it. So you'll see like most of these I don't have it. But if you notice that there's a giant difference in the waveforms on either side of the cut, you'll get a little click. So like let's say I had I'll just manufacture an example here. So like if you had a big waveform into this small waveform, usually it happens going the other way, but let's see.
It shouldn't be forgotten.
See that? You can hear that sharp little click.
And shouldn't be forgotten. Shouldn't be forgotten. Shouldn't be forgotten. And shouldn't be forgotten.
That's because the waveform is getting truncated like that. So I just right click and hit add default transition.
Shouldn't be forgotten.
So
this generation shouldn't be forgotten.
Obviously this edit is ridiculous, but you don't hear that little terrible pop anymore.
Generation shouldn't be forgotten.
That click.
Shouldn't be forgotten.
You see what I'm talking about?
Shouldn't be forgotten.
That's because the waveform is just getting murderized. That's what I do there. And you'll notice that my default transition is way shorter than the normal default transition. Like the normal default transition in Premiere is like 30 frames or something, like 10, 15 frames. Mine is really short because most of the stuff I cut is VO kind of stuff, and I'm just putting this crossfade in situations like this to prevent those little cracks and pops and clicks. And so I have it basically almost as short as it could possibly be. So it looks like I've got it default length is 6. And what's nice about that is you can then go like, you can just hit that and Shift D, I think, is the default. You can just apply that transition to everything. And most of the time, if your transition is short like that, you won't introduce weird bugaboo stuff. I know I said this was going to be fast. I'm already 6 minutes in, so we'll see. But you'll notice here on the music, I've got these audio keyframes. So when do you want to use, and like here in this, I've got a crossfade. So crossfades are for kind of patching two clips together, right? Like that kind of a thing. Crossfading manually with audio keyframes are when you need like more manual control, and the most often time you're going to use that is when you're going between two tracks of music. So so you can hear like I have a nice fade in on this, and this track fades out on its own, but you can manufacture and sometimes you want it to be harsh for, like, you know, creative reasons. Here, this one's... You see?
Best world design.
And then...
Nominees are...
Something I have to do a lot is you ride the level down. Yeah, right here. So you ride the level down over time, so it's a little less noticeable that you're turning the volume down. Sometimes you want a dramatic change.
Ghost of Tsushima. Sucker Punch is no stranger to open world games.
And so here
However,
I'm still
so
I'm still fading this music out slowly, but it's just less noticeable. Another example of when you might want to do that is if a music track is slowly crescendoing, but you're using it, crescendoing means getting louder over time, but you're using it as a music bed, so you don't want it to be changing volume. You can kind of counteract the raise in volume. So like if the waveform, let me see if any of these kind of do that. Yeah, right here. So if the waveform is slowly getting louder, like this one is, it didn't seem to get loud enough for me to have to worry about it, but what you do to counteract that is you can then lower this keyframe a little bit. I mean, usually you want to be pretty subtle with it, but that can counteract that volume shift. You'll notice that these different sections are all different colors. I use color labels a lot. I think I used every single color label in this edit. When I'm cutting something like Stir Crazy, the show I edit for Comedy Central right now, like when I'm going through the workbench to do a content cut, which means just cutting down the interview into the chunks, that comprise the interview and taking out dead air and stuff, I'll label each different section with a different color. And that helps me to be way faster when notes come through. If someone's like, hey, we can just lose this whole section, I can just be like, okay, cool, and like highlight that entire section, and then just like delete it. And that just saves a lot of time. Also, it just keeps you way more organized. The way to do that is just right-click on it, go to Label, and you can change it to any kind of color you want here. Huge tip, too. You'll notice that all of these are uniform, that I have the video all on this track, and graphics, titles are all on their own track. You always want to do that. You want to have your tracks as minimal as possible. You don't want, like if your edit looks like, like this, like if everything's just like all over the place, all bugaboo, that's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for you. It's a nightmare for anyone else who has to jump into the edit after you. And it's slower. It's not fast. So you want to be organized as you possibly can. And that includes for this. And when you're on a more professional level, like doing stuff, you're going to need to do that because other people might have to jump into your edits later, and make sizzle reels and stuff out of the stuff that you've made, and you don't want to embarrass yourself. Like this could even be a little cleaner, honestly. Like I've got these old things in here, and the reason I do that in these is because the way these graphics work, they were exporting strangely. Like these graphics are just exported versions of these, but I had to do an MOV because they wouldn't export correctly. It was just some weird graphical bug that was happening, so I had to get creative. And I left them there because next year I'm going to have to change the titles, and so I don't want to have to rebuild that. But typically you wouldn't leave dead clips in your timeline like that. Okay, so what about actual cuts, like editing? I've talked about this a little before, but here are some more just things. And I'm going to use this crazy montage here as an example. So let's watch it real quick.
2020 Game of the Year is...
So you can see, like, I'm trying to cut on kind of the beat, but it's also trying to be motivated, right? And so, like, I'm trying to match action on different, from clip to clip, you know, like this one, that's like a formal edit, kind of, like, the jump goes into the jump, the flying goes into that flying, you know, and it's all about, like, where is your eye looking? Where is the viewer's eye? And, like, the eye follows motion. And so, like, this is a great example, this part right here. So Miles runs up this building, jumps, falls into a totally different shot in around the same part of the screen, right? Like, his body's in a similar position, he's in almost the same spot on the screen, and your eye is already on him. So even though it's changing location, it feels like the same jump, kind of, right? Like, it's a fun, exciting thing. Whoosh, like, instead of landing on that building, he just keeps going. And then that goes into sort of this flying Ori thing. So, obviously, they're not quite in the same position, but the brightness and color changes enough. And I'm kind of drawing attention to the cuts in this montage because, like, it's very percussive and it's very exciting, and I'm trying to build excitement, and I mean, we really do that over here in a second. But yeah, so cutting on motion is like number one when you're cutting stuff like this. It's just really great. And I mean, I said formal edit. This isn't exactly a formal edit. I mean, it sort of is because I'm matching. It's like a match cut, you know. A formal edit is more like theoretical. So like that would be. It typically would happen more in, like, art kind of stuff. But these are sort of a formal edit, where it's, like, going from flight to flight, right? Or it's thematically linking your edit. And editing is all about motivation, and it's all about emotion. Whoa. And so here I'm trying to drive excitement, and we know these games, and we're looking... You know, and so matching flight to flight, or falling to falling is an exciting way to do that, and it's a formal kind of, you know, it links it together in your mind. Other examples of that would be, like, I don't know, someone, like, reaches for a tea kettle, you know, but then you see their hand hit the handle of the tea kettle, and that cuts to someone's hand, like, just grabbing a door handle and opening a door or something like that. Like, that's a formal edit, because you're linking that motion and that idea. And I mean, even better, I mean, the best way to do that is if it's emotional too. And like, that's the big thing for motivated cuts, is cut on the feeling. Walter Murch, a famous editor who cut a lot of stuff back in the day, like Francis Ford Coppola stuff, he would do a trick where he would pause the footage with his thumb on the same, like, whenever he felt the cut, he would pause. So if you're ever having trouble, like, knowing exactly when to cut on something, try that and see, like, play it a few times and then see if you stop on the same place multiple times in a row, and then you're like, okay, that's where the cut needs to be. Cutting to music is very, very different from cutting an emotional scene. This trick of stopping the playhead where you feel it works best for like emotional scenes, like actors talking to each other. With music, it doesn't always work that way because you're always going to stop on the beat. But cutting to music, you don't always want to cut on the beat because it's kind of a weird thing, but your eyes and your ears and your brain don't always kind of talk at the same speed. So, like music video editors will definitely tell you, like, a lot of times you have to cut the video before the beat or right after the beat. So, like, I mean, on this beat cut, right? So, like, this is where the cut is, and this is where the beat is. So I cut, like, just before it. See that? It cuts just before it. But it feels, when you're watching it in context, and like that one I cut right after it because I wanted it to hit, like I wanted it to land. But, yeah. And like, matching the action on that cut, so the edit doesn't happen on the cut, but the action in the scene happens on the cut. And also, I mean, this is getting really dumb, but how many syllables does family have when it fades in, and how does it match the music? Family bond. I mean, just, I don't know, stupid. But, see, so cutting before the beat, like, weirdly, now that we're paying attention to it, it probably feels maybe wrong, but when you're watching it in real time, it feels right. And I think the big example here is this fast section. And I'll play it through in real time and see if you can tell. It's really hard to tell because it's so fast, but see if you can tell if the cuts are happening right on the beat or not. No, right? It's... Bop, 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 bop. Like there's one too many, too. And a lot of that has to do with the motion in the scene and like what's happening, but just to give it that feel that it's like bop, 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 bop. I had to work with this part of a lot, tweak it a lot to give it that kind of like percussive feel. And I had to toy with it, and at first I was cutting on the beat, and it wasn't working. And so then this is finally what I came to. And like, you pause for a second and then, you know, hit that. I mean, obviously I'm trolling about Last of Us here, but like, I mean, this whole montage is all about trolling, right? It's about building excitement for the reveal, but it's also about trolling the game that is about to be revealed for people who don't already know it. And like in this case, I'm peppering in the winner so that subconsciously you don't think that it has a chance. And I'm intentionally only showing Last of Us right at the end because I'm thinking, I usually do this every year. It's not just this Last of Us 2, but like I withhold the one that people probably think will win, pepper in the actual winner so that people think, well, it must not be that then, you know, and then gut punch you with the runner-up and then hit you with the real deal. And in this case, with a hilarious, stupid-ass music change.
Half-Life Alex.
Anyway, okay, the last little thing I wanted to talk about, because, you know, you'll notice if you look over here, and obviously, like, I don't cut in a tiny little screen, but to show you all, I had to put everything in one screen, you know. But this is the layout I use. I use project up here with effects, and then your source window is right here with effect controls, and then your program window is here. But normally my program window is its own thing, you know. And then my timeline I always have across the entire bottom with tools that I almost never have to click on except for the title tool sometimes, and the meters over here. But notice, like,
post-launch editions, including
how it's kissing the top, like, almost always. And
Allow us to
that's
not only continue the journey.
that's a product of what I've heard referred to as the Loudness Wars. Over the years, you know, things used to be mixed to -12 and then -6, and then music started pushing it up and closer to 0 all the time, and YouTube is almost always kind of maxed out. So for our YouTube channel, like TV, the broadcast standard used to be like never go above -6, you know, and before that it was -12. And like for our channel to not just seem hella quiet, we have to do what everyone else is doing, which is like kiss the limit, like almost blow out always. Which seems nuts, and it kind of is, but whatever. And a great way to do that is to go to Window and activate the audio track mixer, and then you can see all of your audio tracks here. So this will start collapsed. You can open that up by clicking on this little caret here. And it shows audio 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, all your channels, your tracks. That's down here, these guys. And what I do, usually, if you have a project with multiple people speaking, I will click down here and I will make a submix track, and then I will send these to the submix. And a submix track is right before the master, and then it pumps to the master, and so then you can put your compressor on all the dialogue tracks at once without compressing the music or effects, which you pretty much never want to do in this sort of setting. You don't want to compress everything together because it will just make a mush. But a compressor is really good for VO type stuff, and I mean all our projects and podcasts and stuff have a compressor on all the voices, because what it does is it kind of normalizes and raises up when someone starts talking quiet, and it brings down when people are talking loud. So you can have like you set your threshold and margin. The margin is like the loudest you possibly want it to go, and you'll see like it's right before 0. And this threshold is fairly aggressive, but yeah, I mean you can do pretty well by just doing the broadcast setting, default setting, preset. But that'll like help normalize the audio, and then I always just slap a hard limiter right at the end on the master track, just to keep it from peaking. Quick and dirty tricks, you know, maybe not, you know, the high standard of everything, but I don't know, that's the way you do it when you got to get something done. So yeah, I don't know, these are some tips and tricks. I went a little longer than I thought I would. I was thinking this would be like a 6-minute video. But yeah, so hopefully you find those helpful. I have longer videos about editing on the Easy Update playlist throughout the past years. Check those out if you're interested, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please do, it helps the channel actually. Thank you and goodbye.